Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again is finally done. The finale aired last night. I saw it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the show. I want to talk about what I liked, maybe what I didn't like. But before we get into everything, what's good, guys? It's Demi M7. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It would be incredible. So right off the bat, I do have to preface just how much skepticism there was for this show because of its entire pre-production sort of mess that was going on. Basically, the show got reworked a lot. It was supposed to be one thing at first, then it ended up being another thing entirely. Then the creatives didn't like the direction that it was going in. Kevin Feige didn't like the direction it was going in, and it just kept getting changed, and it kept being something new. So really, any movie or TV series that ends up going through that many rewrites and that many changes to its identity, more often than not, the end product is just not going to be good. Which is why it is so pleasantly surprising for me to say that Daredevil Born Again is not one of those situations. It was really good. Look, it's not a perfect season of television by any means. There definitely are some issues. But overall, for what it ended up being, considering everything that it went through, Daredevil Born Again is a great first season. The show picks up right where the Daredevil series from Netflix left off, and it does carve its own path. I'm not gonna get into spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched the show. I'm just gonna kind of tiptoe around what happens. And one of the things I really appreciated about the show was that right from the jump, from the very first episode, frankly, the first 10 minutes, Matt Murdock goes through something that is extremely troubling and traumatizing for him. That thing that happens to him ends up being the backbone of his entire arc throughout this season. You see how much he loses himself, how much he doesn't want to be a part of that Daredevil part of his life anymore. He wants to focus on just being by the books. He wants to put people in jail by being a lawyer. And throughout the season, you see him juggle with this. It's weighing on him constantly. Do I help people just by not being violent and by going through the books, or do I be Daredevil and do what I have to do? Shout out to the entire cast for their performances in this season. Still excellent stuff. Of course, Charlie Cox is great as Matt Murdock. I mean, I don't think it gets talked about enough for how good he is in the show. It's so hard, at least in my opinion, to play a blind man, and yet Charlie Cox has been doing it for a while, and he's great. Vincent D'Onofrio is as menacing as ever as the Kingpin. I mean, his voice is gravelly and as funny as it can sound at times. He makes it work somehow. And also, I have to shout out Michael Gandolfini. I mean, listen, man, his dad was a legend. He will always be a legend. And it's so great to see Michael take up that mantle. He's great in the show, too. And look, if there was one thing that the original Daredevil series was known for, it was its action scenes, the action sequences that it had. And I'm happy to say that Daredevil Born Again lives up to those scenes. Admittedly, I will say there's a bit more CGI in Born Again than there was in the original show. I guess it's just kind of what happens when you join Marvel Studios. But the fights are visceral, they're bloody, they're gruesome. And speaking of gruesome, there are some very disturbing things that happen in the show. Again, it's hard for me to not talk about them because it would be spoiler-ish, but let's just say that there are certain characters that do certain things that just make you say, wow, Marvel Studios just, they want to show all the blood now. But when it comes to a character like Daredevil, and when it comes to the show that it was on Netflix, you have to have that. You have to have that very gritty, grindy, and just gross sort of atmosphere, and bloody, of course. I'd say the biggest issue with season 1 of Born Again is definitely the pacing. There are some episodes that really just kind of fell flat. I think the biggest example of this, not just for me, but for most people, is the bank episode. Like, I'm not going to get into what happens, but when you hear the bank episode, you know what I'm talking about. It just really felt out of place compared to like all the other episodes basically surrounding it. I think it could have very easily been just a very small like B-side of an episode, but instead it ended up just being one whole episode when it didn't really need to be. But what the Daredevil shows have always thrived on is that emotional, that inner turmoil that Matt Murdock is going through with the people around him. I mean, frankly speaking, not just with him, but with all the characters that we end up coming to know and love. There's a lot of tension. There's suspense. There are things that characters need to think about and how they want to approach certain things that makes you question how they should approach it. That's part of what has made these Daredevil shows so special, that there isn't really a whole whole black and white element to this. There is a lot of gray area. More often than not, Matt Murdock will decide to do something that ends up hurting the people around him that he cares about. And then that makes you start to question with him whether or not what he's doing is right. Another big element for Daredevil Born Again is this whole theme of corruption when it comes to Mayor Fisk. That's right, Kingpin being the mayor of New York. You know he's a bad guy. I know he's a bad guy. All of New York knows he's a bad guy, yet he does find very clever ways to make it seem that he's actually doing something good for the city. That really is such a big piece of this season of the show. It's Kingpin trying to manipulate not only the city to get to do what he wants to do, but also manipulating the law force. And I really do think that this season really elevated Kingpin to one of those top tier villains that we've come to know and love in the comics. So overall, season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, I thought was very good. It takes all the elements that we've come to love from the original Daredevil show, and in some cases elevated it. Now, of course, the consistency in this season wasn't quite all there, but that again is because of all of the sort of stuff that was going on behind the scenes during pre-production. But given the fact that it came out this good in spite of all of that, it makes me very optimistic for the next season. I don't think it was perfect by any means, but if you really loved that original series, I think you're gonna really like season 1 of Born Again. I thought it was very good. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about Daredevil Born Again season 1, and until next time, peace.